"Sorry, ma'am, your name isn't on the guest list," the gatekeeper said coldly. Beyond the wrought iron gate, crystal lights glittered. Laughter rang out sharp as knives. Helena Brooks stood still, her hand trembling slightly. Through the window, she saw Vanessa, her daughter-in-law, in a red dress, raising her glass with a faint smirk. "Perhaps she should wait outside," she said deliberately loud enough for the guard to hear. Laughter burst around the table, each sound cutting deeper into Helena's heart. "Evan," she called softly, but her son only glanced toward her, avoiding her eyes. "Mom, this is a bank event. It's only for special guests." His voice faltered. She looked down at her lilac linen dress, clean and simple yet elegant. "So I embarrass you now?" she asked quietly. Evan said nothing. The savannah night grew colder. Helena clenched her hands, steadying her voice. A gust of wind blew, sending her shawl to the ground. As she bent to pick it up, the scent of damp earth brought back old memories. These same hands had scrubbed hundreds of floors, wiped countless windows for others. At 30, she'd been widowed, raising 2 children by cleaning hotel rooms. Evan had once cried because classmates mocked him for having a mother who cleaned. She had only smiled and said, "I work so you can hold your head high." But tonight, that same son bowed his head, letting others humiliate her. Helena straightened, a quiet light in her eyes. "Call the estate manager," she told the guard calmly. "Tell him Helena Brooks, owner of the Magnolia Estate, is here." The 2 men froze. Moments later, hurried footsteps echoed. Noah Davis, the estate manager, appeared in a black suit, slightly out of breath. When he saw her, he bowed deeply. "Mrs. Brooks, my apologies for the delay. Please come in. Everything is ready." Inside, the laughter and music stopped. Vanessa went pale, her hand tightening around her glass until red wine spilled onto her dress. Evan stood frozen. Helena stepped in her small heels, clicking evenly on the marble floor. "The owner of the estate, that's her someone," whispered. Helena stopped in the center of the hall, the chandelier light soft on her silver hair. "Thank you for letting me wait outside long enough to remember who truly belongs here," she said. Then she turned to Noah. "Clear the table in the middle. I'll sit there tonight." "Yes, ma'am," he replied, bowing. Evan moved toward her, forcing a smile. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? I just thought... You thought I wasn't refined enough to walk through this door," she interrupted, her voice low and steady. "Perhaps my mistake was letting you forget that wealth isn't in the suit you wear, but in the memory of the one who sacrificed so you could afford it." Vanessa trembled, forcing a weak smile. "We just misunderstood, Mother. It's nothing serious." "No," Helena said, "only small people think it's nothing." She looked around the room at the many eyes fixed on her. "In fact, this dinner tonight is also mine," she said. "This villa, this land, this entire estate belong to Brooks Estates Group, the company I founded." The air thickened. Evan's mouth fell open, Vanessa's face turned white. Helena turned to a waiter. "Bring me a glass of Cabernet Vintage 2010, the one reserved for the host." The waiter nodded quickly and hurried away. Evan lowered his voice. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know." "No need to apologize," she said softly. "Just remember, I don't need an invitation to enter my own home." She lifted the wine glass that had just been brought, the dark red reflection gleaming across her lined yet dignified face. "Congratulations, Evan. You were promoted today." She took a sip, set the glass down gently. "And I've just been promoted in my own eyes." No one spoke. The chandelier light shimmered like a stage. Helena turned toward the door, the night wind rushing in with the scent of jasmine. She paused, her voice calm but firm. "I don't need anyone to open the way for me. I bought this road long ago." The savannah night was silent, broken only by the wind and the footsteps of a woman, once dismissed, now walking like a queen, returning to her throne. Noah Davis pushed open the glass doors the night breeze swept in, tilting the candle flames. "Madam, the central table has been prepared," he said. The entire room fell into an uncanny silence. Helena Brooks walked in, slowly, her pace unhurried, but every step carried a quiet weight. Those who had laughed and chattered moments ago now lowered their heads, pretending to stare into their glasses, afraid to meet the gaze of the woman they had just mocked. The soft lavender fabric of Helena's dress shifted gently under the crystal lights. She sat at the center table, hands folded neatly calm as if nothing had happened. "Bring me a 2010 Cabernet from the private cellar," she said. Her tone was light but made the waiter bow deeply and hurry off, as if escaping a storm. Evan still stood by the entrance, his face pale. He tried to maintain a weak smile, but his voice trembled. "Mother, are you really the owner of this place?" Helena didn't look at him, only turned the water glass in front of her. "If you had read the contract you signed when your bank entered the investment partnership, you would know." A murmur spread through the room. People began to realize that the woman once turned away at the gate was the one who owned the entire estate. Vanessa pushed her chair back, trying to stand. "Mother, it was just a misunderstanding. I didn't," Helena interrupted with a faint smile. "There is no misunderstanding here, Vanessa. You've simply given me a costly lesson about how those who are helped can so easily despise the one who helped them." Noah signaled to the staff to turn off the music. Only the soft clink of silverware and the heavy breathing of uneasy guests remained. Helena's eyes swept the room, her voice steady yet cold. "I am the founder of Brooks Estates. This building, the restaurant across the lake, and every villa in this area belong to my corporation. I've avoided events like these because I dislike showiness. But tonight, I wanted to see what kind of man my son has become." Evan lowered his head, his lips trembling. "Mom, I just wanted you to be comfortable." "Not comfortable?" She asked, her voice low but cutting through the room like glass. "Does comfort mean standing outside in the cold?" Her words froze the air. "When your father was alive, he used to say, 'True wealth isn't in money, but in how you treat the one who gave you life.' Tonight, you proved him wrong." Vanessa sank back into her chair, her perfectly applied makeup now smudged. She gripped her napkin tightly, her eyes filled with fear. A woman whispered to her husband, "I can't believe it. She's the real owner of this place." The rumor spread like wildfire. Helena gestured to Noah. He stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Yes, ma'am. Send our finest wine to the bank executives' table," she said. "Tell them tonight's drinks are on the house from the owner." Noah nodded and hurried away. As he did, Helena turned back to Evan. "Don't worry, my son. I didn't come to take revenge. I came to remind you that humility never goes out of style. No one dared to breathe." Evan tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. "Mother, I don't know what to do." Helena stood lifting her wine glass, the red light reflecting across her face. "Start by raising your head. You've bowed too long before other people's pretenses." Noah returned and gave a small nod, signaling that her request had been fulfilled. Helena looked around the hall, the chandelier light mirrored in her bright eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said clearly, "tonight's dinner is a celebration for my son, Evan Brooks. But it's also a reminder that true wealth isn't found in banks, but in character." A few hesitant claps echoed from the corner, growing gradually louder. Evan stood motionless, unsure whether to feel proud or ashamed. Vanessa lowered her head, tears spilling onto her red dress. Helena set her glass down and looked at her son for a long moment. "I don't need recognition," she said softly. "Just remember I am not someone to be turned away from her own door." She turned toward the exit, her voice low but resonant across the room. They may forget, but you cannot. The grand doors opened once more. The night air swept in, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden. Helena walked out, her small frame steady, her silver hair glowing under the lights. Inside, Evan stood still, his hands hanging at his sides, and for the first time in years, he felt ashamed of his own silence. Outside, a gentle breeze moved across the stone path, awakening in Helena the feeling she had lost for so long, the feeling of finally being herself without anyone's permission. Morning slowly broke over the city of Savannah. Sunlight streamed through the living room window of Helena Brooks' house, glinting off the porcelain teacup in her hand. The room was quiet. The only sound was the steady ticking of the grandfather clock. Last night's dinner had already become the talk of the upper-class people, whispered about the old woman turned away at the gate who turned out to be the owner of the estate. But Helena paid little attention. She sat upright, eyes distant, as if listening to the faint echoes of her past. She remembered her youth, the years when she had nothing but her two hands. Back then, she was not Helena Brooks, the president of Brooks Estates, but Helena Moore, a 30-year-old widow with two young children and a damp-walled rented room. She worked as a cleaner in a small suburban hotel, doing the jobs no one else wanted, scrubbing rooms, washing toilets, laundering stained sheets. Her hands became calloused, her back ached constantly, yet she never complained. As long as her son could go to school, as long as there was a hot meal each night, it was enough. One summer evening, while she was mopping the fifth-floor hallway, a middle-aged man stopped beside her cleaning cart. "Ms. Moore, isn't it? I've noticed you never miss a single shift," he said. It was Noah Davis, then just a maintenance worker at the hotel, a quiet man with foggy glasses and a calm gaze. They exchanged a few words and in time became friends. Noah had once been an engineer but went bankrupt after a failed investment. He told her, "People only learn the value of what they've lost when they have to scrub floors to earn their next meal." Helena smiled and replied, "And that's when they learn how to stand up again." That exchange became something they both carried through life. Years later, it was Noah who helped Helena buy her first house, an old wooden cottage by the river, so cheap that everyone thought it worthless. But Helena saw potential in the wreckage. She scrubbed, repainted, and sold it to a young family for twice the price. For the first time, she realized she could use her own mind and effort to change her fate. From that small house, Helena began a new journey. Each season, she bought another abandoned home, fixed it, and sold it. She learned to read contracts, negotiate with banks, and understand every fine print. People laughed, a cleaning lady dealing in real estate. She only smiled. "I don't trade houses, I trade belief in myself." Through those years, Evan and his younger brother attended the best schools. They never knew that behind their tuition were nights when their mother worked until 2 a.m, or the time she fell asleep over her ledger. Helena never blamed them. She wanted them to grow up in a world cleaner, easier than hers. But as they grew, that very world made them forget who built it for them. Amid the chaos of her growing business, Helena still made time for a special place, the St. Paul's Home Orphanage on the city's edge. She visited every week, teaching the children to plant flowers and telling them stories. Among them was a thin boy named Samuel, whose eyes shone with uncommon light. When Helena asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" he answered, "I want to help people like you, people no one believes in." The words moved her to tears. Years passed and Samuel grew up. Helena sponsored his education in law, and the boy she once met in that orphanage was now the attorney for Brooks Estates. It was he who had sent her a message a month ago warning that Evan was trying to transfer part of the company's assets to the branch of the bank he managed. Helena read the message and said nothing. She felt no anger, only cold resolve. Perhaps it was time her children learned a different kind of lesson, not about money, but about character. This morning when Noah entered the room, Helena was ready. On the table lay a thick stack of files, contracts, ownership papers, schedules of capital transfers. "Is everything in order?" Ma'am Noah asked quietly. Helena nodded. "It is. It's time I tell my story, Noah. Time people remember I am not just a mother who was turned away at the gate." She stood and opened the window. Light poured in, illuminating her face, the wrinkles etched deep like carvings of time. "I used to think happiness meant having good children and a home to return to. Now I know happiness is when no one else gets to decide your worth." Outside, the golden sunlight poured over the oak trees, and birds chirped like the prelude to a new chapter. Helena closed her eyes and took a long breath. The old pain was still there, but beneath it, something new had begun to grow. The quiet strength of a woman who had endured humiliation and was now preparing for her final act of retribution. The afternoon sun bathed Savannah in golden light. In the spacious living room, Helena Brooks sat quietly beside a cup of cold tea. On the table lay a thick stack of documents, investment contracts, share certificates, everyone bearing her name. Outside, a gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of jasmine and a faint trace of salt from the river. Noah Davis entered carefully, placing another file on the table. "Everything has been backed up. Evan won't be able to transfer any assets," he said. Helena nodded lightly. "Good. I want everything transparent. When people lose their honesty, they also lose the right to be trusted." Her gaze lingered on the family photo hanging on the wall, Evan as a boy smiling brightly, Mason beside him, clutching his mother's sleeve. Once they had been her pride. Now all she could see was distance, an invisible boundary built from pride and money. She remembered the first time she met Vanessa. The young woman had arrived in a white silk dress, elegant but cold. When Helena offered her another slice of cake, Vanessa smiled faintly. "Thank you, but I'm not used to food with so much butter." The words were light, but to Helena, they left a mark. That woman's sweetness always hid a blade beneath. After marrying Vanessa, Evan changed. He visited, less spoke with calculated politeness, always busy with bank meetings. Whenever Helena called, it was usually Vanessa who answered. "Mother, he's busy. We already have house staff, so please just rest." Each time Helena remained silent. She knew that love, if given too long without being returned, eventually becomes a burden. One afternoon, Evan and Vanessa came to see her bringing along a brochure for a retirement home. "Mom, we think you should take it easy," Evan said softly, his tone almost soothing. "They have nurses and companions your age. It's very comfortable." Vanessa placed a hand on her husband's shoulder and added, "They even have cooking classes and yoga. You'll love it." Helena looked at the glossy page showing smiling elderly residents. She set it down, her eyes unmoving. "You want me to leave this house, don't you?" Evan hesitated. "No, Mom, you misunderstood. We're just worried about you." Vanessa smiled politely, though her voice carried a hint of impatience. "It's dangerous for you to live alone. Let us arrange things." Helena rose slowly, her voice calm. "When you were little, I sold my wedding ring to pay your tuition. Do you remember that Evan said nothing?" Vanessa glanced at her watch and murmured, "Times have changed, Mother. What matters now is comfort." The words hung in the air, heavy and cutting. Helena smiled faintly, a sad smile sharp as a blade. Comfort means being told to leave your own home. No one answered. Only the steady ticking of the clock filled the silence, marking the rhythm of estrangement. That night, Helena couldn't sleep. Moonlight fell across her old notebook filled with records of every dollar she had saved. Beneath the last line, she wrote a single sentence: "Tomorrow, let's see who stays when I have nothing left." The next morning, she called Evan. "I've lost my job," she said evenly, "and my savings are gone. I may have to sell the house." Her tone was calm, almost detached. Evan only replied, "That's probably for the best, Mom. You can move closer to us." Moments later came a message from Vanessa's mother. "I found some wonderful places for you. You'll be well taken care of." Helena stared at the screen and let out a quiet laugh. There were no tears left, only a cold stillness spreading inside her. She closed the phone and called Noah. "Do you still have the Magnolia contract? It's still in the safe, ma'am," he replied. Helena nodded, her voice composed. "Keep it secure. It's time they remember who truly built all of this." Late afternoon rain draped Savannah in a soft haze. Helena Brooks sat at the table, a cup of cold tea before her, the screen of her phone glowing faintly. 2 new messages had arrived. The first from Evan Mom: "I've sent you a few more retirement homes. If you agree, I'll pay the deposit." The second followed quickly from Vanessa Mom: "I've already spoken with them. They have yoga classes and a shared kitchen. You'll love it there." Helena read each word slowly, her gaze dimming. Every line was polite, gentle, yet cold as steel. She set the phone down and exhaled softly. A chill crept through her chest, sharp and silent, like wind slipping through worn fabric. She had thought she already knew what ingratitude felt like, but clearly there were deeper shades of it. Beside the cup sat her old savings book and the Magnolia estate files. One represented years of struggle, the other the fruit of endurance. Helena stared at them, lips pressed tight. Every dollar earned by her calloused hands, every signature on those contracts was proof that she was not an object to be arranged or dismissed. She rose and walked to the window. The rain thickened, drumming softly. Through the rhythm, she heard her late husband's voice echo in memory. "Never let anyone decide your worth, not even your own children." She had smiled back then, thinking he meant it as comfort. Now she knew it had been a warning. Night fell, the room bathed in warm yellow light. Helena turned on her computer and reopened the documents Noah had sent. Every legal record, investment contract, and share certificate of Brooks Estates appeared on the screen. She read through them page by page, number by number, as if revisiting her life story. From a hotel cleaner to the owner of dozens of properties, there had been no miracle, only endurance. Near midnight, the doorbell rang. Mason, her younger son, stood in the rain, soaked to the bone. "Mom, I just wanted to see if you're all right." Helena gave a tired smile. "Thank you, at least someone still remembers me." He set a basket of fruit on the table, his voice hesitant. "Evan's just worried about you. He doesn't mean any harm." Helena looked at him, her voice low. "Worried for me, by trying to push me out of my own house." Mason lowered his head. "I just don't want to argue." She nodded slowly. "You're afraid of conflict, afraid to offend, afraid of the truth. But sometimes silence is just another kind of betrayal." Mason said nothing. Helena placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her tone softening. "You still have a good heart, but you must learn to stand on the right side. I don't need pity, son, only respect." When Mason left, Helena returned to the table and called Noah. "Do you still have the Magnolia contract?" His voice came steady. "Of course it's still in the safe." Helena spoke quietly. "Keep it secure. I'll be needing it soon." The next morning, the sky cleared. She went to the company office. The staff rose to greet her with respect, honoring the founder who had always remained humble. Inside her office, Noah waited with Samuel, the young lawyer she had once sponsored through law school. I want you both to review every transaction Evan signed over the past 3 years, Helena said firmly. If anything looks suspicious, prepare ownership verification files. I won't let a single dollar be wasted. Samuel nodded. Understood, ma'am. Helena looked at them, her tone calm. I'm not seeking revenge. I just want them to relearn a lesson I taught long ago. Never underestimate the person who gave you your foundation. That afternoon back home, her phone rang. Evan's voice was light, almost cheerful. Mom Vanessa already made the deposit for the care center. You can move in next week. Helena's reply was even and composed. Good, but before I go, I want us all to have dinner together. Evan sounded surprised. Dinner, where Helena smiled faintly. Somewhere you know well, the Magnolia estate. He thought his mother had forgiven him and agreed eagerly. All right, I'll arrange it. When the call ended, Helena stood still. The sunset spilled bronze light across the window pane, washing the room in a soft, burnished glow. She whispered to herself, if they think they can cast me aside, then let the very place they chose become the stage for truth. The rain had stopped. A breeze passed through the jasmine garden carrying the scent of earth and something quietly alive. On Helena's face there was no bitterness now, only a cool, steady clarity. She had once lost everything, and because of that, she now knew how to take it back, not with tears, but with the justice she built for herself. The savannah sky glowed like molten gold that night. At the Magnolia estate, classical music drifted through bursts of elegant laughter. Evan Brooks. Helena's eldest son was hosting a lavish party to celebrate his promotion. On the stone terrace, the lights shimmered across Vanessa's gown, graceful, youthful, and laced with pride. No one inside that house knew that the woman they had once humiliated was about to walk in, bringing with her a storm that would change everything. Helena arrived earlier than expected. She wore a black dress with a white lace collar and carried an old leather purse. The wrought iron gates at the front of the estate were closed. 2 guards approached, polite but distant. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you on the guest list?" one asked. Helena looked at them, her voice calm but firm. "Call the manager. Tell him Mrs. Brooks would like a word." Moments later, hurried footsteps echoed across the courtyard. Noah Davis, the estate manager, appeared with quick steps and eyes full of respect. "Madam, my apologies for the delay." "Please come in." The gate swung open. Light from the ballroom poured out, washing over Helena's face, serene, cold, and commanding. As she crossed the threshold, the music faltered. Dozens of curious, uncertain eyes turned toward her. Evan pivoted the smile on his face, freezing mid-air. Vanessa set down her glass and instinctively stepped back. "Mother, why didn't you tell us you were coming?" Helena met her son's gaze and replied evenly, "Because you never invited me." Vanessa forced a smile. "Mother, tonight's just a small gathering for Evan's business partners. You must be tired. Why don't I have someone drive you home?" Her words dripped with sweetness, yet every syllable carried disdain. Helena said nothing. She looked around the glittering hall, then turned to Noah. "Set a place for me at the center table. The lighting there is perfect." The room fell tense and silent. Evan frowned. "Mother, what are you talking about?" Helena smiled faintly, her eyes calm but sharp as glass. "This entire estate, including the house you're standing in, belongs to Brooks Estates, the parent company I own." The air shattered. Laughter froze halfway. Vanessa's face went pale wine, spilling from her glass onto her dress. Evan stared at his mother, stammering, You own Magnolia." "Yes," Helena replied, "and from now on, remember this place carries my name, not yours." She sat down and adjusted her napkin. "Bring me a glass of Cabernet Vintage 2010, she told the waiter, "and send another bottle to the bank director's table." Note it's a gift from the host. Evan stepped closer, struggling to steady his voice. Mother, I didn't mean to offend you. I just wanted me to stay outside so I wouldn't be in the way, right? Helena cut him off. Don't explain. People only speak freely when they think the person they're insulting has no power to answer back. Vanessa's voice trembled. Mother, I'm sorry. I didn't know. No need to apologize, Helena said evenly. Save that energy to learn respect. She rose to her feet, the chandelier light gleaming in her cool eyes. I have a toast, she said, her voice clear across the room. To my son's success, and to everyone here, may you remember that sometimes the person you push out the door is the one holding the key to it. Silence fell. Evan stood frozen. Vanessa bowed her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. Helena set her glass down, her tone low but strong as steel. Go on with your celebration. I only came to remind you that the history of this house didn't begin with anyone's business card, but with the hands of a woman who was once dismissed, yet still stood tall. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking steadily on the marble floor. Behind her, whispers began to spread, part awe, part disbelief. The doors closed softly, leaving only the scent of jasmine in the night air. Helena lifted her eyes to the glowing sky, her gaze bright beneath the lights. Tonight she needed no one to clear her path. She was the path. The next morning, the city of Savannah awoke to an unusual commotion. Every local newspaper carried the same headline: bank director thrown out of his own party, the mansion belonged to his mother. Photographs of Helena Brooks leaving the ballroom, her back straight and eyes radiant, were captured from every angle. The story spread across social media faster than she could stop it. The entire city was talking. Some called her the fearless mother. Others whispered she must have been secretly wealthy all along. But Helena remained silent. She needed no defense. The truth spoke for itself. Meanwhile, Evan and Vanessa faced a storm of public outrage. That morning, as they stepped outside, reporters crowded the street. One shouted, "Do you feel ashamed that your mother owns the house where you hosted your party?" Evan kept his head down, pushed through the cameras, and hurried into his car. Vanessa wore dark sunglasses, her face tense. She had once dreamed of appearing in the news, but not like this. At the Brooks Estates office, Helena's phone rang non-stop. A television network requested an interview. A financial magazine wanted to feature her as the woman behind a hidden real estate empire. Helena simply replied, "Thank you, but I don't need a stage. I only need justice." That afternoon, Noah Davis brought her a new folder. "The media is digging into the company's assets," he said. "I think you should make an official statement." Helena opened the folder, her tone calm. "Do it. It's time they knew that the old cleaning woman they looked down on once kept this entire hotel and restaurant chain alive." Noah nodded, admiration gleaming in his eyes. "Aren't you worried your son will get caught up in the backlash?" Helena sighed softly. "He needs that lesson. Losing one's reputation is sometimes the only cure for arrogance." 2 days later, the headlines exploded online. Brooks Estates founder once worked as a hotel maid. Thousands of comments poured in beneath the article. Incredible, what a powerful comeback, and others saying she must hate her children. Helena read them all and smiled faintly. She hated no one. Hatred only keeps people stuck, and she was moving forward. That afternoon, Samuel, the young lawyer she had once sponsored through school, entered her office, his face bright with excitement. "Ma'am, I have an idea. If we start a foundation to help elderly people mistreated by their own children, the public will understand your true message." Helena looked at him, her eyes lighting up. "What name would you give it?" Samuel answered without hesitation. "Second Horizon, because everyone deserves a second sunrise." Helena nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile. A perfect name. Let's begin at once. I don't want my story to be just another headline. I want it to be a light for those who believe their lives have ended. That evening in her quiet home, Helena turned on the television. The news showed Evan leaving the bank headquarters, head bowed among a crowd of reporters. The anchor read, "The bank has announced the temporary suspension of Mr. Evan Brooks for violating ethical standards." Helena watched her expression neither angry nor pleased. Sometimes she murmured, "You have to fall once to realize you've been standing in the wrong place." Vanessa was stripped of her title as vice president of the city's elite women's club for damaging the organization's reputation. She cried the entire morning while Evan sat silently, his hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. Neither spoke a word. As for Helena, the next morning she was already at the Brooks Estates headquarters. She signed the official documents establishing the Second Horizon Foundation before the gathered press. Her speech was brief. "I am not seeking revenge. I am restoring justice. When kindness is dismissed, it must stand up and say once more, I'm still here." Applause filled the room. Camera flashes burst like fireworks. In that moment, Helena Brooks, the woman once turned away from her own home, was no longer a victim, but a symbol of quiet strength. When a reporter asked, "Do you have any message for your son and daughter-in-law?" Helena simply smiled. Live long enough to understand that arrogance is a debt, repaid with honor. As for me, I've already paid my share. After the press conference, she stepped out into the deep red glow of sunset. The evening wind brushed through her silver hair, carrying with it the salty scent of the Savannah River. In her heart there was no anger, left only a profound, peaceful calm. At last, justice had spoken, not through shouting, but through an unshakable truth. The evening air in Savannah softened after the rain, damp and luminous as streetlights shimmered through the window, making Helena Brooks' room glow like a quiet lake. On the table lay 3 neatly sealed envelopes, each marked with a name, Evan, Vanessa, and Mason. Helena sat upright, her gaze steady. The time had come not just to speak of justice, but to carry it out. Noah Davis entered carrying a brown leather folder. "Everything is ready," he said. "All 3 will arrive tomorrow morning as you requested." Helena nodded. "Good. I want the meeting held in the Magnolia Conference Room, the very place they once made me stand outside." The next morning, the elegant conference room was silent. Evan and Vanessa sat side by side, pale and tense, pretending calm. Mason sat apart, restless, his eyes uneasy. Helena entered with Noah, her small frame, seeming to make the room heavier. "Thank you for being on time," she said evenly. "Today we're here to discuss your debt." Vanessa gave a nervous laugh. "Mother, if you need money, we can transfer it right away." "But calling it a debt seems a bit—" "Do not interrupt me," Helena cut in sharply. "I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the debt of honor." She opened the folder. "Over the past 20 years, I have spent a total of $1,280,000 on tuition, housing, weddings, and your debts. I don't want it repaid in cash, but from today onward, each of you will work to repay it." Evan frowned. "What do you mean by work?" Helena took out the envelopes and placed them before them. "Evan, you will head the cleaning team for Brooks Estates offices. $18 an hour, 6 days a week." Vanessa froze. "You must be joking. I'm the vice president of the Business Women's Club." Helena looked at her coldly. "From now on, you'll be an assistant cook at the Magnolia restaurant. Evening shift, $15 an hour." Then she turned to Mason. "As for you, you'll be a maintenance technician for our rental properties. $17 an hour. I chose this because you'll learn something more valuable than money patience." No one spoke. The only sound was the faint rustle of paper. Helena continued, 70% of your wages will be deducted monthly toward your debt of honor. After 5 years, the rest will be forgiven. But if anyone quits, the debt will double. Evan slammed his hand on the table. You're humiliating us, Mother. Helena met his eyes, her voice low and firm as stone. No, I'm saving you. Humiliation only comes when one loses self-respect. Work never disgraces anyone. Vanessa trembled, her eyes red. Mother, I can't do this, I just can't. You have the right to refuse. Helena said, placing another paper in front of her. Sign here to forfeit all inheritance rights, including assets, shares, and my life insurance. The room went still. Mason clenched his fists, looking at his mother. I'll do it, he said quietly. Helena turned toward him and nodded. Good. The one who knows how to begin has not yet failed. Evan sat rigid, his face flushed. Vanessa bowed her head, tears dripping onto the page. After a long, heavy silence, Helena spoke again. I spent my life teaching you to hold your heads high. Now I'm teaching you to bow them when necessary. Only then will you understand the meaning of honor. She picked up a pen, signed the bottom of the contract, then pushed 3 pens toward them. You have 30 minutes. If you refuse, I'll send every record of your reckless spending and Evan's financial misconduct to his bank and Vanessa to every board where you still hold an honorary seat. No one answered. Only the ticking of the clock filled the air. Then Mason picked up his pen first and signed. Evan watched him, his hand trembling, before finally signing too. Vanessa was last, her ink smeared by tears. Helena gathered the 3 contracts and folded them carefully. She stood, her eyes sweeping over them. From this moment, I am no longer your safety net. I am the overseer of your redemption. Work, repay, and relearn how to be decent human beings. She turned toward the door. I don't want apologies. I want results. Light from the hallway streamed in, catching her silver hair. The door closed softly behind her, leaving 3 bowed heads in silence. In each of them, shame no longer felt like disgrace. It had become the first step toward a lesson they would never forget. The first morning after the family meeting, the sun rose gently over Savannah. Light streamed through the glass window, illuminating Helena Brooks's thin hands as she opened the employee report file. On the first page, 3 new names stood out. Evan Brooks, cleaning supervisor; Vanessa Carter, kitchen assistant; Mason Brooks, maintenance technician. Beneath each name was a short note. Training begins today. Helena closed her eyes for a moment. She felt no triumph, only a quiet stillness inside. Justice doesn't need applause, she thought to herself. It only needs results. At the main Brooks Estates building, Evan, dressed in a dark blue uniform, was polishing the tall glass panels in the lobby. His expensive shirts had been replaced by a work jacket stained with cleaner. At first, other employees whispered, "Isn't he that former bank director?" Evan kept his head down, silent. During his break, he sat on the steps outside, sweat soaking his collar, his back aching. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to look up at others passing by and pretend not to notice. Vanessa worked in the Magnolia restaurant kitchen. The harsh neon light reflected off her tired face. She had once been the one giving orders, now she wore gloves, washed vegetables, and wiped down counters. On her first day, hot oil splashed and burned her hand. She wanted to quit, but remembered Helena's words. You have the right to walk away, but when you leave the table, don't ask why others still get served. So she returned, swallowed her pain, and kept chopping onions until her eyes stung with tears. Mason worked maintenance at the company's rental properties. The job was hard, but quiet fitting for him. He fixed pipes, changed light bulbs, patched walls. At first, his co-workers treated him like a spoiled rich kid playing laborer. But within days, Mason worked non-stop without a single complaint. One worker quietly told Noah, "That boy really wants to change." Every evening, Helena received a short report from HR. She read carefully, not missing a line. Evan completes tasks on time but still clumsy. Vanessa, learning to log recipes, no longer leaves her station when busy. Mason offers help to coworkers when they fall behind. She folded the papers and nodded. The anger inside her had long faded, replaced by the steady discipline of a mother teaching her children through real work. One afternoon, Noah knocked on Helena's office door. "I have something to show you," he said, placing 3 photographs on the desk. Evan wiping floors, Vanessa carrying trays, Mason kneeling by a pipe. "I think you should see these. They're starting to understand." Helena looked at the photos, her expression softening. "When people learn to bow their heads," she said quietly, "that's when they finally learn how to stand tall." But the public wasn't as forgiving. A restaurant guest snapped a picture of Vanessa in the kitchen and posted it online with a mocking caption, "From vice president to kitchen assistant." The photo went viral. Those who once praised her now reveled in her downfall. When Helena heard, she only told Noah, "Don't take it down. They need to face judgment just as I once faced contempt." Evan wasn't spared either. A former colleague spotted him in his uniform cleaning glass and sent a photo to their old work group. The bank director is scrubbing his old office floors. The news spread fast. Evan took it silently. That night he returned for the late shift, refusing to rest. When the security guard unlocked the door, Evan simply said, "I missed a spot on the stairs. I don't want it slippery in the morning." When Noah told Helena, her eyes glimmered. "That's the first time he's felt responsibility," she said softly. "Not out of fear of me, but fear of becoming who he used to be." A week later, the daily reports arriving on Helena's desk were shorter. No mistakes listed, only one final note from Noah. All 3 work full 8-hour shifts. No complaints, no early departures. That afternoon, Helena went to Magnolia unannounced. She stood outside the kitchen watching Vanessa washing dishes, her hair tied back, face bare of makeup. Vanessa's hand slipped and a plate shattered on the floor. She froze, but instead of walking away, she knelt and picked up every shard. A small cut opened on her finger, yet she only winced slightly and kept cleaning. Helena watched quietly, nodded once, and turned to leave without saying a word. As she exited the restaurant, she saw Evan outside the office building, sweeping fallen leaves. The sun was blazing, sweat streaming down his face, but he kept working carefully, brushing every corner clean. When he spotted his mother in the distance, he straightened up as if to speak, but Helena raised a hand, signaling gently, "Keep going." That night at home, Helena stood by the window, gazing toward Magnolia's glittering lights. To her, that glow no longer symbolized luxury. It was the light of awakening, the only kind of light she ever wished to pass on to her children. She whispered to herself, "Sometimes kindness must be forged through sweat. Only then will it never be forgotten." Elsewhere in the city, her 3 children sat quietly in a small apartment temporarily provided by the company. They no longer argued or complained. Each of them understood now the wound of pride only heals when you have the courage to mend it with your own hands. A misty morning settled over Savannah, the sun a half-hidden golden disk behind a veil of clouds. Inside the quiet house, Helena Brooks sat by the window holding a cup of jasmine tea. On the table lay a stack of papers sent by Noah, the latest report on her 3 children. She opened it and each line softened her heart. Evan arrives on time, no violations of conduct. Vanessa performs well in the kitchen. Mason assists the maintenance team proactively. Helena smiled faintly. Those plain words were the most beautiful sound she had ever known, the sound of change. 2 months had passed since the family meeting when she had forced them to sign the debt of honor contracts. At first, the silence between mother and children felt like an unbreakable wall. But slowly, through work, sweat, and the sting of being seen beneath those they once looked down on, their pride began to erode. Evan Brooks, who once strode through glass offices, now wore the gray uniform of a janitor in the very building he had once managed. Each morning he wiped glass doors, cleaned hallways, and greeted the security guards, the same people he used to ignore. At first he bowed his head out of shame, but soon he bowed out of respect. One afternoon after finishing his shift, Evan looked up at the building glistening in the sun and smiled. For the first time, he thought, my hands have truly made something clean. Vanessa Carter, who once sat as vice president of a ladies' club, now worked in the cramped kitchen of the Magnolia restaurant. Heat from the ovens flushed her face. Her hair stuck with grease, her clothes smelled of garlic and onions. On her first day, she cried from exhaustion and humiliation. But as the rhythm of chopping knives and the clang of pots surrounded her, her heart slowly steadied. One day, the head chef tasted her soup and said, a little salty but cooked with heart. The words froze her. It was the first compliment she'd ever received for her effort, not her status. Mason Brooks worked as a maintenance technician. With a worn toolbox slung over his shoulder, he fixed leaking pipes, changed bulbs, and patched damp walls. These humble tasks taught him the value of patience. Once, while replacing a light in a dim hallway, an old man passing by said softly, "Thank you, son. Now it's bright again." Mason stopped for a moment, that simple sentence striking something deep inside him. Helena followed it all through Noah's reports. One afternoon, Noah stopped by her home and placed 3 photographs on the table. Evan cleaning floors, Vanessa stirring soup, Mason kneeling by a sink. "See this?" Noah said. "They're truly changing." Helena looked for a long time, eyes glistening, and smiled. When people learn how to bow, she whispered, that's when they finally learn how to stand tall. But the world outside was not as kind as she was. A restaurant guest took a photo of Vanessa in the kitchen and posted it online with a mocking caption. From vice president to kitchen hand, karma served hot. Evan, too, was photographed cleaning the lobby of his old office, the post reading former bank director, now washing windows. The images spread quickly. Noah offered to have them taken down, but Helena only shook her head. No, they must learn to face the world's gaze. Dignity isn't born in praise, it's forged in the silence of endurance. A week later, Helena visited Silver Pine's home, the nursing center, where she had asked her children to volunteer. Without warning, she quietly walked through the halls filled with the faint scent of disinfectant. In the common room, she saw Evan sitting across from an elderly man playing chess. The old man laughed. "You moved wrong again." Evan smiled back. "Yes, but at least I'm learning how to move right." In another corner, Vanessa was helping an old woman mend the hem of her dress. Her hands trembled, but each stitch was careful and neat. When the woman said, "You're good at this," dear Vanessa laughed softly, her eyes shining with a peace Helena thought had long vanished. Down the hall, Mason was replacing a light bulb, polishing the glass cover until the glow shimmered across the ceiling. Helena stood silently, her heart swelling with emotion. Her 3 children, who once despised labor, were now serving others with sincerity. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because they had realized that helping others was another way of saving themselves. When they left the building, Helena waited outside in the courtyard. Evan stopped when he saw her. "Mom, how long have you been here since your wrong chess move?" she said, smiling gently. "But that move helped you win against yourself." Evan bowed his head without replying. Vanessa came next. her voice soft and raspy. "Mom, today I cooked porridge for an old lady. She said, it tastes just like when my mother was alive." No one has ever said something like that to me before. Helena squeezed her hand. "It's not the food they remember dear. It's the heart you put into it." Mason came last, holding up a burnt-out light bulb. "I'm keeping this," he said. "It went dark because it was forgotten. Now I've replaced it with light for it and for myself." Helena nodded. "You understand now." On the drive home, Noah drove slowly. "You've done what no court could do," he said, made the guilty want to change. Helena looked out the window at the city glowing under the sunset. "It wasn't me," she replied. "It was the work. Labor is the language of redemption." When she arrived home, Helena stood before the mirror looking at her face, old, weary, but calm. She whispered, "Justice isn't making others kneel. Justice is when they stand again, knowing how to bow." Outside, a light rain began to fall. Droplets slid down the window, glimmering in the lamplight. Helena smiled softly. She knew now that the children who had once broken her heart were walking the same road she had once walked, the road of work, of dignity, and of true rebirth. The savannah sunset bathed the streets in gold sunlight, filtering through the oak trees and settling gently over Helena Brooks's small house in a warm, honey-colored glow. In the kitchen, she carefully set a freshly baked chicken pie on the table, the aroma of butter and rosemary rising softly into the air. It had been a long time since she had prepared a full meal with her own hands. It wasn't a fancy dinner nor a celebration, just a simple family supper after years of storms and distance. When the doorbell rang, Helena wiped her hands and went to open it. Her 3 children stood there hesitant. Evan wore a plain shirt and held a small bouquet of wildflowers. Vanessa, in a simple cotton dress, had her hair tied low. Mason stood slightly behind them, carrying a basket of fruit. They looked both familiar and distant children who had once walked away from her arms, now returning with humility and quiet guilt. Helena smiled softly and said, "Come in. This is still your home." The kitchen quickly filled with warmth. Vanessa helped her mother set the table, Mason turned on the light, and Evan arranged the chairs. Their movements were clumsy, careful as if afraid to break the fragile piece hanging in the air. When Helena ladled out the chicken soup, the rich aroma filled the room, stirring memories of the hard years, nights when they'd gathered around the old wooden table, eating leftover rice, but laughing together anyway. Helena poured water into glasses, the golden light glinting off the rim. She looked up and said gently, "It's been a long time since our family was this complete." Evan swallowed hard, his voice low. "Mother, I've wanted to say this for a long time. I used to be ashamed of where I came from. I thought that if I hid our past, people would respect me more. But now I know when I denied you, I denied the best part of myself." Vanessa lowered her head. Her hands clenched together. "I was afraid, too," she whispered. "Afraid of poverty, afraid of judgment, afraid people would say I married Evan for money. I tried to look perfect so no one would see how empty I really was. But when everything fell apart, I learned something. Money can cover a wound, but it can't heal cowardice." Tears fell glistening in the light. Helena listened quietly, no reproach, no lecture. She simply placed a hand on her daughter-in-law's shoulder, her eyes gentle but steady. What matters isn't being flawless. What matters is standing up after you fall. I once lost everything, my husband, my youth, my faith, but I never allowed myself to lose dignity. Mason, silent until then, spoke softly. "I stayed quiet too long, Mom. When I saw them make mistakes, I said nothing. I thought silence meant peace, but it was cowardice. I let you carry it all alone, and now I regret it." Helena looked at her 3 children, emotion welling in her chest. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her smile remained. "I don't need apologies," she said. "I just need to see that you understand this respect for others begins with respect for yourself." The room fell still for a long moment. Only the soft ticking of the clock and the scent of chicken pie filled the air. Then Vanessa stood and said quietly, "I'll wash the dishes." Mason picked up a cloth. "I'll wipe the table." Evan turned on the faucet and said with a half smile, "And you, Mom, sit down. We'll do the rest." The sound of running water blended with the clinking of dishes, simple noises that somehow felt warmer than any song. Helena stood watching her children working together, their movements awkward but sincere. The sight filled her with deep gratitude. All her life she had dreamed of seeing them bow their heads without shame work, without fear of being looked down on, and now that dream stood before her alive and real. When the dishes were done, they sat together again, steam still rising from the sink. Evan looked up. "Mom, if you want to end the contracts early, we're ready. Because you're tired?" she asked. He shook his head. "Because I want to finish the full year, not to repay you, but to repay myself." Vanessa nodded, eyes still glistening. "Me too. I need more time to truly change." Mason smiled faintly. "And me, I'd like to stay with the company, but this time on my own merit." Helena fell silent, then smiled softly. "You don't need my permission. From now on, the path belongs to you. I just swept away the dust so you could see where it leads." Outside the window, the night breeze carried the faint scent of jasmine. The family sat in silence, but it was a peaceful silence, the kind that comes only when hearts have been cleansed by tears and honest work. When her children left, Helena stood at the doorway watching their figures fade under the golden streetlights. Turning back inside, she saw the kitchen still warm steam lingering over the dishes, the smell of baked chicken drifting gently through the air. She sat down, exhaled deeply, a breath of release, not sorrow. After so many years, the family dinner had finally become what it was meant to be. Not a formality, not an obligation, but a meal seasoned perfectly with love. Helena looked at the photograph on the wall, her and her 3 children in front of their old wooden house. The light from the lamp reflected on the glass, shimmering like tears of joy. She whispered softly, her voice trembling, yet warm. "Thank you for coming back, not to ask for forgiveness, but to start over with me." Outside, the jasmine-scented wind drifted through the open window, blending with the gentle hum of the night. In that small house, Helena Brooks smiled, knowing she was no longer alone. The children who once broke her heart had now learned the most precious lesson of all, that when a person learns to bow their head out of love, that's when they finally grow up. A clear winter morning covered Savannah in crystal light, each pale ray glinting on the surface of the river. In her high-rise office at Brooks Estates, Helena Brooks sat before the large window watching the steady flow of people below. On the wall behind her hung a golden bronze plaque engraved with words she had written herself. "Dignity is the house special here." It had been 5 years since the night she was turned away from the Magnolia banquet, and that night had marked the beginning of her family's rebirth. Evan Brooks was now the manager of 2 mid-range hotels within the company. Gone were the luxury cars and silk ties. He wore a simple shirt rolled up his sleeves and worked alongside his employees. Every morning he was the first to arrive, checking every window and every corner of the lobby floor. The staff spoke of him with genuine respect, calling him the boss who listens. At weekly meetings, he often said, "There are no small jobs, only people who fail to value the work of others." It was the same lesson Helena had taught him when he was a proud young boy. Vanessa, who once looked down on kitchens, was now the head chef of Meals of Grace, a charity project under the Second Horizon Foundation, founded by Helena. She cooked for the elderly for struggling students and always kept one pot of porridge named Helena's meal. Each time she served someone, she smiled, remembering her mother-in-law's words. Forgiveness isn't something you say, it's something you do in small ways. She had once feared the smell of oil and the heat of the stove, yet now she found joy standing amid the steam cooking dishes that made others smile. Mason, the gentle and quiet son, had grown into a man of quiet strength. He now led the technical team for a worker housing project that he both designed and managed. The housing complex was named Hector's Light in memory of the old man at Silver Pines, who once taught him not every flaw needs fixing, but light must always be replaced. Mason turned that phrase into his philosophy of life. He no longer avoided conflict, instead teaching his younger staff to take responsibility and to face mistakes without fear. Tessa, now Mason's wife, served as the operations director of the Second Sunrise program, a project helping abused or abandoned elders find shelter and purpose. Under her leadership, hundreds of seniors were given homes and a new start. The press called Tessa the heart of the program, but Helena preferred a simpler name daughter. That afternoon, Helena left her office and walked slowly to Second Chance Kitchen, the restaurant that once bore the name Copper Finch, the place where she had been humiliated years ago. Now it stood as a symbol of renewal. On its red brick wall hung a modest sign, "Dignity served daily." The head chef was Vanessa. Helena sat quietly in a corner watching her daughter-in-law cook. Vanessa didn't notice her. Her face glowed, each movement filled with grace and quiet joy. Helena held her cup of tea, her eyes misting. This, she thought, is what true victory looks like. That evening, the family gathered in Helena's small kitchen. The meal was simple chicken soup, cornbread, and jasmine tea. The warm light from the lamp fell gently over the old wooden table. Evan arrived early to help set the table. Vanessa baked bread. Mason adjusted the light, and Tessa placed a vase of wildflowers in the center. Watching them, Helena felt her heart glowing like fire. Dinner began in peaceful silence. Evan raised his glass of water, his voice rough. "Mother, 5 years ago I thought you were destroying us. Now I understand you were teaching us how to start over. Because of you, I'm no longer afraid of being looked down on because I've learned to respect myself." Vanessa looked at her eyes bright. "I used to believe money was a safe shield, but when I lost everything, I learned that nothing is more precious than gratitude. Thank you for forcing me to learn that." Mason spoke next, his tone steady. "I used to think silence avoided conflict, but it was cowardice. Now I know if I don't speak up for what's right, I become part of what's wrong." Helena was quiet for a long moment. She didn't need their apologies because what she wanted was already here in the humble, steady eyes of her children who had learned how to bow without shame. She said softly, "I didn't win against anyone. I only conquered my own fears, the fear of being alone, the fear of being forgotten. Now I know children who can change themselves are life's greatest reward." After dinner, they all washed dishes and wiped the table together, just like in the old days of struggle. No one gave orders, no one avoided work. There was only the sound of running water, quiet laughter, and the warmth of understanding. When everything was done, Helena opened the door and watched the snow fall softly outside. She whispered, "Everything is enough now." Late that night, after her children had gone, Helena sat alone. She took out her old notebook and wrote the final line of her memoir. Some lessons must be paid for in tears, but those very tears wash away pride and bring compassion back to life. She set the pen down and closed the notebook gently. Outside, the moonlight reflected through the window, illuminating her lined yet radiant face. Helena smiled her heart at peace. At last she understood that justice was not found in courts or contracts, but in the simple act of learning to bow to begin again and to live better than yesterday. She turned off the lights, leaving only a small candle burning on the table. Its flickering flame reflected off the bronze plaque. Dignity is the house special here. Then Helena spoke softly, her voice calm and low. If anyone is listening, tell this story. Let them know that even if life once cast you out from its table, you can still return and take your rightful seat. When you remember that dignity is something no one can take away. And in the candle's final glow, Helena Brooks, the mother once looked down upon, smiled gently. Outside, the snow had stopped, and a faint pink light of dawn began to rise along the horizon.